Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Mediocre Photographer who reviews cameras that everybody's already done a review on. In today's review, I'm going to be talking about the Nikon F2. I'm going to do an overview for this camera, talk about the good, talk about the bad, show some photo samples, and then finish it up with a rating out of 10. Between 1 and 10, what do I think this camera should be rated at? But before I get into that, I just want to point out that the light that's behind me right here, I don't know why it looks like that. It's just a blue light, but for some reason, it looks like a painting. Like it looks like it's not real, but it's just a regular blue light. I don't know why it looks so weird, but I don't want to change it because I'm lazy and I don't feel like it. So that's going to be here for the remainder of the video. If it's too distracting for you to listen to me talk, oops. Let's start with the overview of this camera. So this camera is a Nikon F2. It's in the Nikon F line, which is 35mm film series let out by Nikon. I think they made these from the 1971 to 1980. I don't think they made this. I know they made this between 1971 and 1980 because I looked at Wikipedia before I started this video. This is a modular camera, meaning that there's a little button back here that you can press. If you press that button with your finger, it's really actually kind of hard to, and push this little lever right here, then you can take off this top part and you can replace it with other top parts that do different things, like maybe one's a waist level finder, so you can just look down like a hipster with a medium format, but it's 35mm waist finder, which I wouldn't use because this ground glass is so small that you wouldn't be able to see it very easily. I'm not going to talk about all the pieces you can get for it because I don't want to, and I only own this one. So that's an overview of this camera. Now let's talk about the good things about this camera, starting right off with the things that make me feel warm and fuzzy inside every time I pick it up. At the top of this list is build quality. This thing is built like a brick house. No joke, if you were a security guard carrying around mace and somebody attacked you and they took your mace and you didn't have any way to defend yourself, you could use this as a makeshift weapon and beat someone to death with it because it weighs 1,000 pounds and is made out of pure titanium alloy steel. If I dropped this on my foot, I would also break my other foot from the sheer build of this camera. It's just insane. This thing is just built very, very strong. Definitely top of the good things list, but also top of the bad things list, which I'll get to later on. The second thing I love about this camera is the film loading system. So instead of having the film rewind button pull up to open up the back, this actually opens up from the bottom, which I enjoy. It kind of makes you feel like you're shooting a more fancy camera, like a Leica. You're not. It's a Nikon. You're not shooting anything fancy and better, and your photography will not be amazing because you're not shooting a Leica, but I don't know, it feels cool. Also, you don't have to worry about your film advance lever coming up on accident and popping open the back of the film, especially if you're just trying to tighten it a little bit. You don't accidentally pop it open and expose everything and lose all your shots. So there's that added layer of security for us dummies that have maybe done that before or multiple times before. Next would be the modularness-ification of this camera. The fact that you can take off the top and put other stuff on there. That's pretty cool. For me, it's a pro because I could if I wanted to, but I won't because this works just fine for me. This viewfinder, it works well with the light meter, and I don't know, everything works great in here, but you can get different prisms if you want to, so it's definitely on the pro list. The next awesome thing about this camera is how the light meter works. So this light meter works by opening the film advancement lever right here. So when it's open, you can see through and you see either a plus, minus, or a circle. If it's closed, you don't see anything because it's off. So you don't have to worry about it being on all the time. You don't have to worry about accidentally leaving it on because nobody uses their camera like this unless you use it as a thumb rest, but this camera's too big to use this as a thumb rest, which I'll get into in the cons of this camera. But that being said, yeah, you don't have to worry about the battery going bad in this. It also works really well. I've never had an issue with this light meter reading the light wrong and underexposing or overexposing any photo I've taken with this. Last on the list of good things would be the smooth operation of pretty much everything on this camera, from film advancing to the lock button for the shutter to the actual shutter itself. To loading the film, to changing the ISO, to changing the actual shutter speed dial. Everything on this camera works buttery smooth, and I enjoy that. Anytime I can, shoot with a camera that makes me feel good when I'm shooting with it, like all the controls work and they're not sticky or hard to move at all, it's a great feeling. So that rounds off the good things about this camera. But let's move on to the negative things, the things that make me stay awake at night, the things that make me wish I had just bought that Leica M6 instead. Okay, I'm joking. I would never buy a Leica M6 because not only am I poor, I'm also not Joe Greer, so I'm not worthy of a Leica. Top of the naughty list, like I mentioned earlier, is the build of this camera. Now I said it was a Pro, and it is because you don't have to worry about it breaking, but you do have to worry about this breaking everything else. If I set it down on a table too hard, I'm worried that I might crack the granite. If I drop this on concrete, I don't know, I might cause a fissure that causes San Francisco to just fall into the ocean. The next thing on the naughty list is actually probably user error. It's absolutely user error actually, but it made me mad, so it's gonna be on this part of the list. This self-timer right here doesn't work like self-timers I've used on other film cameras. Usually you pull the self-timer down, you press the shutter, it goes, and when it stops, the shutter goes off. Not with this camera though. If you pull the self-timer down and press the shutter, it's just gonna take a picture and then count down. The picture happens before the countdown if you do that. You're supposed to start the self-timer and then press the button behind the self-timer for it to actually start the self-timer and end with a shutter. I didn't know that, so I wasted like 4 shots when I was trying to do long exposure on there. That being said, I've only used the self-timer like twice, so not a huge deal, but keep that in mind if you buy this. If you use the self-timer, you have to pull it down and press the button behind it, not the shutter. Next naughty list item would be the light meter function. So I said I liked how the light meter worked, and I do, but I don't like the fact that the light meter works with lenses. So this light meter only works with these little bunny ear things that stick up from the lenses. So if that piece breaks off of your lens, then your light meter no longer works on your camera. Okay, I just want to point something out really quick. The little metal piece that you see moving on top of this lens, it's not actually attached to the lens. It's being moved by the lens because the lens has these little grooves that it falls into. So it's not the metal piece that's attached to the lens, it's the lens that attaches to the metal piece on the camera. And I actually have a lens that came without one of those pieces. So this 50mm lens works with this camera just fine, and the light meter actuates because the little bunny ear thing right here. But my other lens doesn't have one, so the light meter just doesn't work on it at all, which is kind of a pain because the camera's light meter is internal, not external. So why would it not work? Well, just because of the design. That's kind of irritating, but I guess if your lenses don't break, then you don't have to worry about it. I've got one that's broken, so the light meter doesn't work. And it's not the worst thing in the world, so it's not super high up on the list, but it's there. It's definitely there. The last on the list, and not the least, but it is the last, would be the ergonomics of this camera. Now, ergonomics, for you folks who don't know what that word means, just basically means hand feel. How it feels in your little grubbly bubblies. This thing does not feel good to take pictures with because there's nothing really to hold on to. I've accidentally started the self-timer before because it's just like a natural place for my fingers to be. I can't use the like a little thumb rest like this because that turns on the light meter. And also this camera's so heavy it feels like it might break it off. But that is it for the bad things about this camera. There's really not much wrong with it. It's mainly just user error or user preference things that I don't like about this camera, but I like this camera way more than I dislike this camera. So for the next part of this video, I'm going to show you a bunch of sample photos I've taken from portraits to landscape to whatever I've taken with this camera, and you can see for yourself how well it looks. And there you have it, some sample photos, the good, the bad. I'm gonna wrap up this entire review with a rating. 1 out of 10. If I could give this camera one number, just a number to encompass the entirety of its existence, it would be 9. 9 out of 10. This is a fantastic camera. This is definitely one of my favorite cameras that I own. I would never get rid of this camera. These are a little bit more pricey than other like lower end 35mm because this is definitely like a Pro series 35mm. I mean, it's no Leica, but it's up there for sure. And that's the end of the video. So thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next review or photo video or whatever it is that I decide to post next. Thanks.